called Blayse.
Blayse. Okay, sorry.
It's basically a combination of Blackstreet, As Yet, and Silk.
You're the finest work of art I've ever seen. The group put a smile on your face like a sip of hypnotic with a Hennessy chase.
A guy named Tony Grant, who replaced me in As Yet when As Yet kicked me out of the group. We became friends, right? Go figure.
Yeah.
And he called me and said, "Hey, Mark, what do you think of doing a supergroup with lead singers from As Yet, Silk, Blackstreet?" I said, "I'll call you right back." So I started to go, Blackstreet, As Yet, please.
Let me take you round and round. Whoa.
And I said, "We're gonna call it Blayse." And da-da-da-da. And so he was like, "Great." And we tried to do that project.
Don't know why we had an argument. All I know is that my baby left.
This was when record deals were still going on.
Okay.
J Record was about to sign us.
It's your turn, truth again. Baby, can I first? I'm going. When you dig deep off into it, it's all about that groove, y'all.
But Blayse couldn't get that taken, didn't take that off?
Yeah, no, because, okay, so I'll just tell you.
As soon as you give it back, I'll be on my way.
I was trying to get the bona fide lead singers of Blackstreet, and I couldn't get them to commit.
It's all about, yeah, that feel good music, yeah. Get it on, yeah. So getting you down.
So I have to say I got like a spin-off. One of the other members.
But you gotta know that I need you. Girl, I'm lost and don't know where to go to.
Singing full, right?
Yeah.
Like I said, groups.
Girl, I'm missing you. Need you in my life.
But I think with Lil G, I mean, was still touring and stuff. So I think that might have been hard for him to split between the two.
No, not really.
Forever and ever and ever and ever.
You know, so no, it was fine. It was just, again, it's always fun. Always somebody. Yeah, man. I'll just leave it there. Mm-hmm.
How do you take four of the smoothest voices in 90s R&B, put them in one group, and still end up with nothing? Like absolutely nothing. No album, no hit single, not even a real tour. Just hype, some leaked tracks, and then, poof, they were gone. No breakup announcement, no farewell interview, just pure R&B ghosting. The group was called Blayse, and if you blinked in 2006, you probably missed them. But this wasn't your typical boy band experiment. This was a supergroup with talent that had already been certified platinum, literally. You had Terrell Phillips from Blackstreet, Tony Grant, and Marc Nelson from As Yet, and the one and only Lil G Jenkins from Silk. That's basically the R&B Avengers. Vocals? Untouchable. Stage presence? Already proven. Fan base? Built in from the jump. So why did Blayse never take off? Was it ego? Was it bad management? Was it the industry pulling the plug behind the scenes? Or did the members self-sabotage before the dream even got off the ground? Because here's the thing, they did record music. There were studio sessions. There were high-quality leaked tracks. There were fan pages and interviews and promo shots. So this wasn't some random garage group hoping for a deal. This was supposed to be big. Like, take R&B back to the top of the charts, big. But if you dig a little deeper, and we did, you'll find a trail of red flags, beef between members, rumored power struggles, label rejection, and past industry trauma that never got dealt with. And when you realize the baggage each member brought into the group, you'll see why this was doomed from the start. Because Blayse wasn't a comeback, it was a cover-up. A last chance wrapped in silk harmonies and smokescreen smiles. And today, we're unpacking all of it. So let's rewind the tape and ask the question that's haunted R&B fans for almost 20 years. How do four legends disappear without ever getting their flowers? Stick around, because what really happened to Blayse will blow your mind. At first glance, Blayse looked like a no-brainer, a cheat code, a dream team. Fans weren't just hopeful. They were convinced this group was about to resurrect real R&B. The kind with buttery harmonies, shirtless ballads, and vocals that made you clutch your chest in the middle of the night. People weren't asking if Blayse would be successful. They were just waiting for the album drop. And honestly, that made sense. I mean, let's break it down. Gary Lil G Jenkins was the undeniable vocal powerhouse of Silk, the same group that gave us Freak Me, one of the most iconic slow jams of the 90s. Lil G didn't just sing, he soared. He was often considered the emotional core of Silk. Marc Nelson was a Boyz II Men original. Yes, original. And later helped lead As Yet, who went platinum with Babyface and had a Grammy nomination under their belt. He was industry-connected, experienced, and had serious writing chops. Tony Grant, also from As Yet, had theater and solo credibility. Not a household name, but respected by people who knew the culture. And Terrell Phillips? He stepped into Blackstreet during the Teddy Riley era, no small feat, and brought a more refined, gospel-rooted style to the group. Individually, these guys had been through the fire. They'd been signed, shelved, celebrated, betrayed, some even replaced. But fans believed that maybe, just maybe, this was their shot at redemption. A chance to finally be in control, to form a group that wasn't controlled by labels, shady managers, or internal beef. The name Blayse itself was a combination of their past and future. Blackstreet, As Yet, Silk, and Experience. A slick branding move that told the public, yeah, we know who we are, and we're here to light things up. But here's where the misconception crept in. Everyone thought past fame equals future success. What they didn't consider, each of these guys brought baggage, creative wounds, burnt bridges, and most importantly, very different visions of what success even looked like in the mid-2000s R&B scene. The fans wanted a revival, but the guys? They were walking into a pressure cooker with 4 lead singers and no real plan for who would actually lead. Blayse looked like a supergroup, but the truth is, they were already fractured before the first track dropped. And once you see the behind-the-scenes chaos, you'll understand exactly why this dream team never even made it to the playoffs. Let's stop sugarcoating it. Blayse was doomed before the ink even dried on the concept. The group officially came together in 2006, born from an idea sparked by Tony Grant and Marc Nelson. On paper, it sounded genius. Handpick some of the smoothest male vocalists of the 90s, combine their fan bases, ride the wave of R&B nostalgia, and boom, chart-topping domination. But behind the smooth vocals and press smiles was a group that had no real structure, no clear leadership, and no major label backing. And yes, we said no label, because despite what fans thought, Blayse was never signed to a major record deal. They were an independent effort trying to look like $1 million machine. And when you've got 4 ex-lead singers trying to make decisions as equals, that's not a group, baby. That's a boardroom with no CEO. Each member had already been burned by the industry once or twice. So, naturally, they were all a little guarded. Everyone wanted control. Everyone wanted to do it the right way this time. But when everyone thinks they know best, that's a recipe for deadlock, not collaboration. Let's be real. This wasn't just about the music. It was about redemption. Every single one of them had something to prove. Marc Nelson, who famously left Boyz II Men before they blew up, was chasing vindication. Lil G Jenkins wanted to break free from Silk's identity and be recognized on his own terms. Tony Grant had always been underrated and was hungry to show he could lead, not just follow. Terrell Phillips, the least known of the 4, had the most to gain, but also the most to lose if it went south. And let's not ignore the timing. The year was 2006. R&B was shifting. Nayo had just dropped So Sick. Chris Brown was fresh out the gate. Usher had already changed the game. The new wave was younger, flashier, and label-backed. So while Blayse was out here leaking singles like Forever and Back for My Heart, the industry had already moved on. To make matters worse, those singles, though vocally strong, never had the push they needed. No viral marketing, no real tour, no streaming strategy. They were operating in an era where MySpace and mixtapes were king, but Blayse was stuck playing by old school rules. No team, no budget, no vision everyone could agree on. And deep down, it felt like this wasn't a group. It was 4 solo acts wearing matching outfits. That's the harsh truth. Blayse didn't fail because they lacked talent. They failed because there was too much history, too many egos, and zero alignment. This wasn't the comeback the fans had hoped for. It was a beautiful illusion, built on broken trust. Here's where things really start to unravel. Because let's talk about the album that never happened. If you dig through fan forums, old YouTube comments, or even archived interviews, you'll find people swearing Blayse had an album in the vault. Some say it was fully recorded, others claim it was half done, and a few believe it was just a demo EP they were shopping around. But the truth is, no official Blayse album was ever released. Not on iTunes, not on CD Baby, not even on some sketchy bootleg site. It just vanished. So what happened? Well, first off, they had no major label deal, despite multiple industry insiders claiming they were in talks. That phrase alone, in talks, is Hollywood for we're waiting by the phone and hoping someone bites. And spoiler alert, nobody did. Not Def Jam, not J Records, not even Babyface's label, which is wild considering Marc Nelson's deep ties with him from the As Yet days. Word on the street is that creative control was the sticking point. Some labels were interested, but they wanted to bring in outside producers, assign a musical director, and essentially steer the ship. But the guys in Blayse? They weren't new kids off the block. These were men in their 30s and 40s, each with platinum plaques and publishing credits. So naturally, they pushed back. Big mistake, because in the mid-2000s, labels were cutting risks left and right. They wanted youth, image, and viral buzz, not 4 veteran crooners trying to self-produce a grown man R&B project. And Blayse, for all their talent, didn't fit the marketing mold. They weren't edgy enough for hip-hop stations, but too mature for teen audiences. The labels didn't know what to do with them, so they didn't do anything. And when it came to releasing music independently, that's where things got even messier. A few songs did surface, like Forever and Feel Good Music, but there was never a proper rollout. No cohesive branding, no album cover, no press tour, just a few singles floating around in the digital ether with no infrastructure to support them. Then there's the rumor that internal disagreements stalled the entire project. Reportedly, Marc Nelson wanted to steer the sound toward a more adult contemporary vibe, something smooth and sophisticated. Meanwhile, Lil G allegedly pushed for something edgier and modern. Add in Tony Grant's theater influence and Terrell Phillips' gospel background, and you've got 4 different visions clashing on every song. One insider said they spent months in the studio, only to scrap most of the recordings because no one could agree on a direction. And let's not forget the biggest red flag of all: no manager. That's right. Blayse didn't have a unified manager or rep working full-time to secure deals. They tried to run things themselves, which sounds noble, sure. But in an industry built on politics, connections matter more than credentials. Without a label, without a manager, and without agreement on the music itself, the missing album wasn't lost. It was never ready in the first place. And by the time they realized they needed help, the window had already closed. Let's be honest. Supergroups sound great in theory. All your favorite voices in one place? What could go wrong? Everything. Because here's what no one tells you. Supergroups rarely work, and Blayse is Exhibit A. See, the fantasy is that when you take multiple lead singers from successful groups and toss them into a new project, magic happens. But in reality, you're blending trauma, ego, and unfinished business. And Blayse was a masterclass in all 3. Let's break it down. Lil G Jenkins had long been known as the voice of Silk, but behind the scenes there were rumors he felt underappreciated. In fact, there was tension in Silk for years over who got creative control, and that tension didn't just disappear when he joined Blayse. Marc Nelson, his career has layers. He was literally a founding member of Boyz II Men, but left before they popped. Then he helped launch As Yet, only to clash with the label and bounce again. He's brilliant, but also notoriously headstrong, which is great if you're solo, not so much when you're collaborating. Tony Grant replaced a member in As Yet, but always felt like the second choice. And in group politics, that energy lingers. No matter how talented you are, walking into a room where you're the replacement creates tension. And Terrell Phillips was the wild card. After a short run with Blackstreet, he never fully broke out. So while the others had names, he had something to prove, which can either fuel greatness or breed resentment. Now, put all of these dynamics in one studio, with no outside mediator, no real manager, and no label to referee. What do you get? 4 lead singers and no background vocals. It's the age-old problem. Who takes the spotlight? Everyone wants their verse, everyone wants the bridge, everyone wants final say, but no one wants to be the second best. So the music turns into a tug of war instead of a collaboration. And here's the thing, supergroups work best when the egos are left at the door. But for Blayse, this wasn't just about music, it was about redemption. Each man came in with wounds, some from labels, some from group fallouts, and some from years of being under-recognized. So instead of building something new, they started relitigating the past. Whose idea was better? Whose voice was more important? whose name should go first in the press. They weren't building a group. They were trying to rewrite their own legacies. And in the process, they sabotaged the very thing that could have saved them. Because a supergroup isn't about combining names, it's about surrendering ego. And in Blayse, no one was ready to do that. Not in 2006. Not now. Not ever. After Blayse quietly fizzled out, no press release, no official breakup, just radio silence, fans were left wondering, what happened to the guys? Let's just say, the paths they took couldn't have been more different. Tony Grant actually did what a lot of R&B singers wish they could do. He pivoted hard. When the Blayse dream died, Tony leaned into acting, stage plays, and gospel-centered productions. He starred in several Tyler Perry productions, including the Madea franchise, and became a staple on the urban theater circuit. He found his lane, built a loyal audience, and stayed booked and blessed. As of 2025, he's still performing in stage plays and occasionally drops gospel tracks on indie platforms. Quietly, he carved out a second career while most of his R&B peers faded into nostalgia. Marc Nelson went back to what he knew best, songwriting and studio work. After all, this is a man who's penned songs for Toni Braxton, Babyface, and Brandy. He released a few solo projects after Blayse, like Marc, My Words and I Want You, but they never caught mainstream fire. Still, his pen stayed sharp. In recent years, he's worked behind the scenes writing for younger artists and doing occasional features. You might not see his name trending, but his fingerprints are still all over modern R&B if you know where to look. Lil G Jenkins took the most familiar path. He went back to Silk. Blayse may have flopped, but Silk was still in demand for throwback concerts, 90s tours, and R&B cruises. Lil G became a fan favorite on the nostalgia circuit, doing live shows and even solo gigs on the side. He also released solo music, including a cover of Let's Get It On, that still gets passed around quietly by Day One fans. In 2025, Lil G is still on the road with Silk, living comfortably and still hitting those high notes most of today's singers wouldn't dare attempt. Terrell Phillips, though? His story's more mysterious. After the Blayse chapter, he pretty much disappeared from the spotlight. No major releases, no big interviews, no confirmed social media presence. Some sources claim he got into real estate. Others say he's still involved in music quietly, maybe writing or producing under the radar. But in terms of public life, Terrell pulled a full-on Houdini, which is wild considering he had arguably the least exposure before Blayse and could have gained the most. Maybe the industry burnout hit harder than we realized. What's striking is how non-dramatic the breakup was. No public beef, no diss tracks, just a quiet fade into individual careers. But if you read between the lines, that silence, it speaks volumes. Nobody ever tried to revive Blayse, no reunion rumors, no anniversary posts. It's almost like they wanted to forget it happened. And maybe that's the final clue, because sometimes when something crashes that quickly, it's not a pause, it's a burial. So where did everyone land after the smoke cleared? Let's talk net worths, careers, and what each member of Blayse is up to in 2025. Because while the group didn't work out, the grind didn't stop. Tony Grant. Estimated net worth, approximately $1 million. Tony might have walked away from mainstream music, but he cashed in on consistency. His pivot into stage plays and gospel productions paid off big time. Between Tyler Perry's Madea universe, urban theater circuits, and faith-based tours, Tony found steady work and a whole new fan base. He's still touring as of 2025, mainly in theater productions across the South and Midwest. And unlike the unpredictability of the music industry, theater audiences show up and pay up. Plus, he owns some publishing from his earlier days in As Yet, which quietly adds to his income. Low-key, Tony's the most financially stable of the group. Marc Nelson. Estimated net worth, approximately $500,000. Marc has always been the writer's writer. While his solo career never popped off in a major way, his pen kept the lights on. He has songwriting credits with Babyface, Tyrese, John B., and Tamar Braxton, and that publishing money, it trickles in for decades. In 2025, he's still working with up-and-coming artists and occasionally pops up at R&B showcases or virtual songwriter retreats. He's not flashy, but his name still holds weight in the rooms that matter. That said, his net worth remains modest, mostly due to being indie and semi-retired from touring. Lil G Jenkins. Estimated net worth, approximately $1.5 million. Let's be real, Lil G is the only one who kept his original fan base intact. Silk is still in demand on the nostalgia circuit, and Jenkins is the face of those tours. They've done everything from 90s R&B cruises to mini residencies in Vegas and Atlantic City. He also gets solo booking fees, feature requests, and streams well on legacy R&B playlists. And here's the kicker. He actually owns a slice of his Silk publishing. In 2025, Lil G's calendar is still stacked with tour dates, and his vocals are as sharp as ever. Financially, he's good. Terrell Phillips, net worth unknown. And then there's Terrell Phillips, the ghost. After Blackstreet and Blayse, Terrell basically dipped. There's little to no public record of his net worth, no confirmed projects, no verified social media, just a handful of deep-cut fans claiming he's still making music behind the scenes. Some reports say he moved into real estate or ministry work. Others suggest he lives a quiet, private life outside of entertainment. As of 2025, he's completely off the grid. And honestly, that might have been the healthiest move of all. In short, Tony Grant is booked and spiritual, Marc Nelson is writing in peace, Lil G Jenkins is still the voice and cashing in on it. And Terrell Phillips? He left the spotlight and never looked back. But no matter where they ended up, Blayse is the chapter none of them bring up. Because even in 2025, that silence is loud. So here's the final hot take. Blayse wasn't a group. It was a bandage. It was 4 men trying to fix the trauma of their past careers by starting something new, but without healing from the old wounds. And that's why it never worked. On the surface, they had everything: legendary vocals, industry cred, and a combined fan base that would have killed for one solid album. But underneath, it was all cracks. No management, no unified vision, and way too many egos fighting for the front seat. And maybe that's the sad truth about supergroups. They're less about synergy and more about survival. Everyone's trying to rewrite their ending, but instead, they end up repeating the same mistakes. Blayse didn't implode with fireworks. There was no public feud, no viral meltdown, just silence. And that silence said everything. It said, "We tried." It said, "We couldn't agree." And most of all, it said, "This was never built to last." Now, R&B fans look back at Blayse like a myth, a what could have been moment, a YouTube memory with barely 50K views and a comment section full of "man, they were slept on." But behind those harmonies was a group that never got off the runway, not because they weren't good enough, but because sometimes the past is heavier than the comeback. And Blayse, they were already carrying too much weight.